Hi, my name is Matt Jones, and I will be discussing the issues of our community. The issues in our community have to deal with the youth developing of drug use. Drugs, however, are responsible for the majority of human innovation of health, philosophy, and other areas of studies which help destroy the negative connection to the actual word drugs. It is hard to say whether or not drugs can actually be good or bad, but it is certainly clear that drugs do have an impact towards the course of human history of our user abusing what is given to them in their communities. The key to getting communities to an impact towards drugs is starting from the bottom to the top. Starting from the bottom is getting the households in a well mannered fixture. If a household has parents abusing drugs in front of their children, then how is this teaching the child that this is not the right thing to do? As a child it gets older, it will only be nature to their minds that they would want to abuse the habits and their parents unless there is local help to get them out of the situation they are in. This leads to the schools to help these children to obtain the information about specific types of drugs. What is outrageous is the children seem to have an easy access from their parents' liquor cabinets. These children are left unattained and can have a problem with alcohol before they even know it. There are always ways to provide help towards communities by staying involved with the right people or even activities so that children do not get caught up looking for an excuse to kill time or boredom. It is hard for these parents that work day in and day out trying to provide for their families. This, however, leaves kids unsupervised and out in the city streets looking for something to get themselves in trouble with. Most of these kids get caught up looking for marijuana because it is constantly talked about in songs or even being shown on televisions that are in their favorite movies. This drug marijuana allows the chill effect and it gives them when they do it by smoking. Another excessive drug that children seem to get fixed after their abuse for a lesser of illicit drug like marijuana is cocaine. This illicit drug has more effects contained a child to lose control of. These drugs can affect our bodies as deadly, and no one really knows what these drugs can actually do in enhancing them in an abusive way. When looking at the community for drug use problems, it only begins with the parents, in my eyes, that the young ones are showing up around. If the adults are doing things that they should not be doing, then it should not be done in kids in a private area so the kids cannot learn of how to use the drugs or even how to think about using the drugs. In this book, How Success Failures in School Relate to Adolescent Smoking, Drinking, Drug Use, and Delinquency by Gerald G. Beckman, he states that parental involvement in early years was more important than later parental involvement nowadays. This being said, the adults need to act like parents that they should be and have an influence towards their kids in a positive manner, not a negative path. According to the book Efficacy of Prevention of Drug Abuse Among Minority Youth by Gilbert J. Botvin, due to the low level of parental support and weak parental sanctions against using alcohol can be related to adolescent drug use, parents should not practice communication strong, consistent messages about the abuse abstinent from drug use from their children. This is clearly stating that the parents should be doing their job of taking care of their child so that they can prevent their child from getting hooked onto bad habits. The more that a child informed, then the less likelihood of them attaining a drug. It is clearly stated by Barry Stimwell in the book Alcoholism, Drug Addiction, and the Road to Recovery, Life on the Edge, that most children, before they are in junior high, that they should know the dangers of each drug, but also the relatively few side effects that some mood altering drugs may produce so that one does not overdose on. He is clearly saying that parents are busy at work and understand their situation and to provide for families. However, there are other resources out there a parent can resort to when needing help to help their child from drugs. It is even stated by Bodeman that he states a parent can look inside their community and find people like community leaders, school staff, human service workers to contribute towards kids by sessions of workbooks or video instructions that are created to share parents' youth activities about the bads in drugs. How is it that communities say that they have a parent's back when helping out on their children to help educate them on alcohol as well as illicit drugs? It is clearly shown that majority of abusers are coming from the younger established generation. The main question is, are the communities actually helping out, or are they just all about the talk? In the book by Gerald J. Beckman, he states that numerous analysts of MTF data and other research have shown that students/children who frequently attend religious services or rate religion to be important to their lives, that they are less likely to use cigarettes, alcohol, and illicit drugs. It does show that churches are out there trying to help, but from the statement it states that they go to frequently in order to receive the educational help from keeping them from abusing drugs. When it comes to schools, they can do only so much because they are providing for counselors to educate their children about the drug abuse and alcohol. They even provided the police department to help out in certain situations on educating the kids and effects on obtaining the use of drugs. However, it does not help due to the fact that it already could be too late when the child is already involved with a drug because at home were not disciplined about the actual outcome. This is sad to see that the youth in our community at such a young age for abusing drugs. When looking at the statistics, it is stated by Stimwell at least 6 or to 10% of 12 to 16-year-olds are felt to be current users of illicit drugs. It is estimated that approximately 49% of 12th grade students have used the drug marijuana in their lifetime. There are thousands of problems surrounding the drug use in the United States. However, the most important one that comes across the youth happens to be alcohol, marijuana, and cocaine. The first key problem that we'll be mentioning happens to be the easiest one to obtain, which happens to be alcohol. When stated by Beckman, as early as 8th grade students that are reported any drinking within 30 days are also reported to have drank more than 5 drinks in a row, at least one during the past 2 weeks. He also states that the most troubling is finding out most of these young drinkers use large quantity of alcohol at least some of the time. The thing that is amazing is the fact that these young children are obtaining large amounts of alcohol when they are still growing to become an adult. It is reinstated from Bodevin specifically focused on alcohol consumption because alcohol was the most important prevalently used drug. Thinking about how bad alcohol really is mind-blowing. People see it as a way to social, but even eventually when socializing it can lead to death if not careful. Stemmel states in his article, alcohol estimates related deaths from 50,000 to 200,000 per year, and many of these deaths are unrelated to the chronic medical consumptions of alcohol. Imagine the numerous amounts of families that are losing a family member each day to alcohol is just outrageous to think. This should be a cause of death. And another unique statistic that Stemmel states in this article is that alcohol is a way to experiment with the occasional social use to continue a subsequent drug like marijuana. This is why majority of abusers of illicit drugs start off on alcohol and then work their way up the chain. Marijuana happens to be the most talked about drug by televisions or even mentioned in songs like I stated in the beginning. It is stated by Beckman marijuana had been the most widely used illicit drug in recent decades and is used as early ages than most other illicit drugs. Beckman also states that 60% of high school students, like seniors, had used marijuana sometime throughout their lifetime, and about 37% were present users. The main reason that many of the people have referred to marijuana is due to the fact of California as well as Colorado. Barry Stemwell claims in his article that in 1996, when California approved the Constituent Use Act allowing residents of the state to possess and cultivate marijuana for medical purposes, is clearly showing that the United States have moved on with marijuana being used and carried, while it is why the percentage of people are abusing the drug such as in such an early age. Marijuana is no joke, and it has gotten so real for kids to get a hold of that Gilbert J. Bodevin states, for marijuana lifetime use, the nearly tripled since 1992 among 8th graders, has nearly doubled for 10th graders, and has increased 50% for 12th graders, leaving a concerning cause of drug use and the knowledge of methods to try to prevent them from obtaining the drug. These numbers are ridiculous and should not be allowed for students at a young age that are still developing. The information I have gathered from my research is astonishing. I was actually thrown off guard with the actual effects with drugs affecting the youth in our communities. It is mind blowing to think something as simple as drugs can destroy things around a child. It is clearly stated by Gerald G. Beckman that parents are the influence for kids to look upon when they are learning or even watching something new. I do agree with Beckman that parents need to set a correct example for influencing our kids in a successful path for success. If the parents do not give effort to show their child, then the child is left to not care about any issues like abusing drugs at such a young age. Mentioned by Gerald G. Beckman, the kids in 8th grade are in a category for the use alcohol, and then the society as well as community has issues. There should never be in 8th grade obtaining drinks at such a young age, especially while developing their bodies. The fact these kids are having one drink is enough, but when they are having five or more at a time within minutes span, then that's what is the true issue with our community, allowing our children to obtain liquor so easily. This only refers back to the parents' fault in my eyes and has a big factor in the role of children abusing drugs. When it comes to others helping out, I do see some local communities trying to give effort towards the children about drugs or dealing with them. However, I do not see enough from the schools to try to prevent the drugs from entering the premises. Yes, there are classes that provide students education about drugs, but some of these students let the education being taught to them be let out because they see it as constantly approach. Another factor that comes into play is the fact that majority of these students are already abusing drugs and could care less about the effect because they are caught in the itch of getting the same buzz later when they go home. I do not like the fact that churches are I do like the fact that churches are giving in their all to educate the kids about drugs, but also preventing them to get around. However, when stated by Gerald G. Beckman that these kids pretty much have to attend church constantly for the kids to under the concept that they to understand the concept that they should get involved with drugs, this is hard to establishment because especially when the working parents trying to support their families may not have time to take their children to church on a consistent basis. This is where I look for help elsewhere in the community to help out so that these kids could actually attend church setting or other organizations to help them keep out of the drug use. I think marijuana being a big illicit drug is not a surprise. I find that quite reasonable because of the talk of the drug. There are so many people around the famous world that consistently talk about this drug and will only lead other kids to find out what it is or even what the drug does. I think that with this states passing laws of serving the drug as medical only allows for easier use of obtaining the drug. This drug will only get popular, and I could see it eventually taking over cigarettes due to the consistently buzz that is given off by the drug. Finally, the lead up of drugs for leading violence is outrageous. I think these kids involved with these parents or even older adults with drugs to sell are by far not acceptable for the community. What a real community is about keeping an eye out for youth and making sure that they're given every opportunity to succeed in the correct path. This means going through hell with the children of working your butt off as a parent. My research paper provides a problem with drugs in the United States among our communities, suggesting ways like educational help for the youth can help keep these drugs away. Having the school help out a parent with illicit drugs and knowing what they can cause to the child is always positive. The parents are also, in fact, the biggest example for a child to grow up with to learn on how to not abuse drugs such as alcohol. All the other illicit drugs like marijuana, cocaine just are lead ups. If a parent can prevent the child with correct adulthood, then the child is less likely to succeed from going down the wrong path of being a part of an abuser. These illicit drugs are dangerous, and this is why I have chosen drugs as my main topic for affecting our communities for the youth. The use of drugs needs to be slowed down and narrowed down to keep our children's reach before drugs carry out our nation of destruction.